I was in 5th grade when all this started. There were many events that happened for me when I was in 5th grade to 8th grade, but I'm only going to talk about 2. Someone knocked on the door. Back then, my neighborhood was considered to be pretty safe. We never locked our doors because we never really had a reason to. So I went to the door and I opened it, but nobody was there. I honestly didn't think much of it. Probably one of my brother's friends or something. So I turned on the porch light and went outside. Once again, for as far as I could see, there was no one. I went back inside and sat in the living room to watch the house until my mom got home. A half an hour goes by and I'm still sitting on the couch which overlooks my kitchen, the kitchen window, and partly out into my backyard. Though at this time it was like 8 p.m., so it was fairly dark. With my head facing the left side of the room watching my show, I saw something dark flash by the window. It was quick, and it was only out of the corner of my eye, but there was something that flashed by the window. A few more minutes go by, and I'm texting my best friend Sam. I told her I thought someone might be trying to prank me or something when I started to feel really uneasy, like someone was watching me. I look up and I shit you not, there was an outline of a person all in black in the fucking window. I just sat there, paralyzed, staring at him, and he lightly knocks on the window and does one of those close-fingered waves that you do to children before he disappears. In my head I was like, no fucking way that just happened. And even if it did, I was sure it was one of my brother's friends pranking me. But either way, I wasn't going to stay in the living room to just let them mess with me some more. I booked it up to my room and locked the door. My mom came home about 20 minutes later with my brother Harrison. I asked my mom if she saw anyone out there, and my brother if he intentionally had someone mess with me, but they both told me no. Harrison really wasn't the kind of person to do something like that, but I figured with it being so close to Halloween, anything was possible. I tried to put it out of my head, and that was that. For now. Some insight of what happened in between these 2 events. I'm fairly certain it wasn't my brother's friend. To this day, I still honestly don't know who it was, or what they really looked like, but after that day I started noticing someone in the backyard. They would just be standing there with black shoes, black pants, a black hoodie pulled up, black gloves, and I was never able to see his face, so I assume a black mask. Each time this happened, I would run to tell my mom, but by the time she got there, they were always gone. I started getting phone calls from an unknown number around that time too, of just silence and occasional breathing, but nobody ever said anything. It only happened a few times, probably less than 20, but they would happen at random times throughout the day and night, though mainly during light. For a long time I was the only one who actually ever saw this happening, because it pretty much always happened to me when I was home alone, or really late at night. Until one day my mom, my neighbor, and I were on the porch talking, when I asked him if he ever saw anybody lingering around our backyard. My mom was quickly like, "Mila," because I guess she didn't want me to sound crazy to the neighbor, since I kept saying all this was happening and she never saw the guy. I mean, she picked up the silent phone calls, but for some reason she never really believed me about the guy in the backyard. But to my surprise, he told me he did. He ended up telling my mom and I that he was sitting on his back porch, next to ours, with his girlfriend, when a man, all in black, came out from behind a tree. He started walking, and then running towards them. When my neighbor, who has a license to carry, pulled out his firearm and told the guy to stop running. The man didn't stop. Matt, the neighbor, shot at the ground and the guy finally stopped. He turned around and started running in the opposite direction, tripping over a branch and then getting up and disappearing. I felt so relieved thinking that that had to be the guy, and that surely he'd never come back. But of course, that's not how it happened. Now, before I get back into it, let me explain. My mom didn't frequently leave me home alone. A lot of the time I was left with my brother, who was 7 years older than me, or a family member. But there were a few times where my mom had to work, went shopping, or went out and I would elect to stay home on my own rather than tag along or go somewhere else. So on this night, I was home alone once more. I was in the living room, and because things had sort of died down a bit with the man in the backyard, I felt comfortable enough to sit in my living room and watch some TV again. This time I can't remember what I was watching, but just like the first time, something black flashed by the window. At this point I was like, nuh-uh, this can't be happening again. And I didn't immediately want to call my mom and ruin her night if it turned out to be not that big of a deal. So I just stared intently at the window, just waiting for him to pop out like he did last time. During what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 5 minutes, I had muted my TV. There was an eerie silence like in those action movies where they're like, "It's quiet. Too quiet." At that moment, I could probably hear a pin drop. But instead, I began to hear my back door rattle slightly. My heart dropped and started racing. It felt like it was going to leap out of my chest. They were trying to break down the door. From where I was, whoever was at the back door couldn't see me. As I heard my back door being broken into, my fight or flight response must have kicked in and I grabbed my phone, unlocked my front door, and hauled ass across the street. I started bawling my eyes out as I ran down some random side streets and alleyways to get as far away from my house as possible. I ended up sitting under a lamplight, pretty much on the other side of town. I called my mom and her boyfriend Kyle, but they could barely understand me as I was blabbering so much. When I was finally able to calm down, I explained to them what had happened and where I was, and they immediately came and picked me up. In the car, I felt so much safer. Kyle was a big guy. He did construction. He had muscle and he was a scary dude if you didn't know him. When we got home, Kyle went in first. He told us to stay in the car, and from inside the house he yelled out that the back door was wide open. He went room to room, floor to floor of our house, searched the backyard, shed, everything, but whoever it was gone. My mom later tried to comfort me and say maybe it was our cat, but we both know that it wasn't the cat. Our back door is pretty hard to get into, and it was wide open. I saw the guy in our yard a few times after that, always just standing there in one spot, and I started sleeping with a knife secretly tucked away by my bed, but eventually he stopped coming around. It took a while, but he did, and luckily nothing like that ever happened again. I think it's also very important to add that nothing had been stolen from the house that night. There were no drawers open, and the door to the basement is right across from the back door. It's often kept open and it had some pretty expensive equipment down there, but it wasn't even touched. So because nothing from my house was taken, we didn't call the cops. Because like I said, for a long time my mom didn't believe me, and once she did we had no evidence, and it eventually just stopped anyway. To this day I have no idea what the man wanted, or why he tried to break into my house, but my mind continues to come up with some ideas. I was only 10 or 11 years old at the time it all started, and I was probably around 12 or 13 when he tried to break in. Both times I was home alone. I'm almost 20 now, and although I don't really think about it too much anymore, I still always find myself watching the window in the back door of my house. Sometimes I still get that eerie feeling when I'm home alone. This is the point of view of myself, Dad, and my sister. This was about 2 years ago when I was 16. It was Monday morning, around 6 a.m. My dad, 2 sisters, and myself were at home sleeping, while my mom was out at the gym. My sister had heard someone ringing the doorbell. She was about to get up and answer it when she heard my dad's footsteps heading towards the door, so she went back to sleep. That's when she heard my dad's footsteps go from walking to pacing back and forth around the house. She heard my dad talking to the cops, saying that someone was on our front lawn and asking if they could come get him. Fast forward to almost an hour and a half later, and that's when I woke up to my dad screaming. At first I was thinking that my parents were fighting, but then I heard a window break from my parents' room. That's when I got up from my bed, got a bat and went out. And just as I was getting out of my room and my dad was closing his door to his room, I saw this huge guy, he reminded me of Mr. T, climbing inside through the window. As my dad was shutting the door, he put his feet up against a file cabinet we have, and his back towards the door with a katana samurai sword in his hand, avid knife and sword collector, keeping the guy out of the rest of the house. While my dad was doing this, he was saying to the 911 operator that this was the third time he had called the cops and nobody had shown up, and the guy was inside our house. I told my dad to give me the phone because I was a little bit more calm, and I answered the questions of the operator. That's when the guy started pushing against the door trying to get through, and my dad told me to get back and protect my sister if the guy happened to get through. So I did. Luckily, the madman stopped pushing the door and the cops at last got there. 2 cops went inside the room with tasers drawn and told the man to get on the floor. He just looked at them and started walking towards them, and that's when the cops fired their tasers, and all the guy did was look at the darts and say, "Ow," and then proceeded to take them off. In the end, the cops were able to take him down and get him in cuffs. The cops told us he might have been on PCP and was just looking for a place to sleep because he had only his shoes and shorts on. What my dad had told us afterwards was that the man had opened the side door and went around back and went inside the dog's house to sleep. We used to have a big husky before he passed, and then afterwards got my scooter I had left outside and smashed my parents' window. He climbed in and got my mom's iPad and went on YouTube looking at the most popular videos. My mom got home to a scene of 6 squad cars and 2 fire trucks outside of the house. What's crazy is that my dad was going to go to the gym as well, but he got lazy and slept in. I don't know what would have happened if my dad wasn't there, but I am grateful he was. Also glad the man didn't break in through the front, because then we would have had to fight the guy since he would have been near my sister's room. When they were taking him out, the cops and paramedics saw that the guy was too big to fit the gurney, so they told him he was going to have to walk, and he says, "Oh man, you gonna make me walk?" I don't know exactly what happened to him afterwards. If you enjoyed this video, do your thing. And if you would like to help support the channel, make sure you look down by the subscribe button. There should be a new thing that's available called the support. I think it's support. Maybe it says sponsor. I don't know, it's all different. But it should be down by the subscribe button. Unless you're on iOS and you won't see it there. But you will see it from other devices, so if you wanted to join that, you can. Essentially what that is it gives you a little badge for the channel, and it will soon give you emotes. And it also, in the community section, has a sponsors only feed, so you can get your early access to videos there, as well as any other topics we might want to talk about in private. For those of you familiar with the Twitch model, it's very similar to that. So if you want to get your badge and get early access to content, exclusive live streams, and some emotes that will be coming soon, make sure you check that out. I appreciate everyone checking out this video, and make sure you let me know what you thought of it down below. I will catch everybody in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true. Bad bye.